Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Here we are, here we are. All props to, mad goddess divine Audrey Hepburn. So, I'm going to do something a little different, a little crazy. Got new digs here. We're rearranging our house. We're looking at different ways to use space differently. This particular room, which used to be called the dressing room, is now, I think actually we're calling it Studio D, because this is now officially the fourth place in our home where we have either done a live stream or recorded, because it's really more of a home, more of a production studio than a home. That's the way we like to live, because, we don't really need the things that a person with 2.5 kids and a Volvo needs. We have different needs. So I'm going to start differently. I'm going to start actually with a song. And this is a song, it's still in progress. It's still, a rough draft, as it were, of a song that came to me back in September. And this was when I began a new journey around the medicine wheel. For those of you who know what that means, you know what that means. Once you train in the healing arts in shamanic energy medicine like I did, or in whatever your healing practices are, it's not a one and done thing. You don't just do the process one time and then suddenly you're healed and then you're a magical, fairy dust person for the rest of your life. No, there's ongoing, here's the thing, there's ongoing opportunities for our soul's continuous evolution. That's the real deal. That's what I'm here to talk about. So this song came to me week 1 of my quest. So this literally started out as, how can I make my meditation practice less boring? Like, it was just straight up that boring. It was that mundane. And boy, did I send myself on an adventure. And I think that was actually the instructions I received from Spirit was, make it an adventure. Make your question a quest. So this was week 1 of the quest. And I decided to also have it be I'm going into too much detail about this. Okay, so I have another series on my YouTube channel, which is called My Journey, something like that. A Butterfly Bootcamp Tale, something like that. It's something about a butterfly bootcamp journey. I decided to go through my own process that I teach and do it publicly to share, what's coming up. And so right now I am just coming out of a period that is a cocoon. And so that was, starting in September, 3 weeks in September, 3 weeks in October, and then I sort of went into a 3-month cocoon. So here I am. I'm emerging. Look at me, butterfly wings. So this song is about trying to quiet the monkey mind, which seems to me to be such an apropos way to open this particular episode of the, Laurelann's Gaialogues, where I'm doing these episodes in partnership with the Gaia channel to engage with their content, to talk about their content. I have an affiliate link that I'm going to put in the description. Please, please, please link, and then decide later on if you want to sign up for them. It's all tracked, and because if it's an affiliate link, that means you are supporting me. Even just knowing what content I'm creating is interesting, knowing what content is prompting you to to click on their programming, right? So that's the whole point here. Well, it's not the whole point. The whole point here is that we need to be engaging our minds with conscious media during these critical times. So that's what I'm here to offer, and I want to try to do it in a fun, lighthearted way, because no one likes to take their medicine when it's bitter. So I'm here to provide sweet medicine, and it starts with a song about quieting the monkey mind. So take a sip of water. Get my other stuff going on. Mute her. She's not here right now. And, let me make sure everybody else is unmuted over here. Everybody's unmuted. Yes, yes, yes. And here we go. Sometimes I feel like everything's falling into place. How do I know if I'm just grinding away at the rat race? Sometimes I feel like it's all falling apart. When do I scrap everything and just go right back to the start? My monkey mind is grinding again. It's been this way since I don't know when dog eats dog and there's chaos all around, I tell myself one more time, slow down. Is it butterflies in my stomach, or is it fear in my heart? All this death and destruction, how do I play my part? If I lean just a little further, will I fall over the edge? Tell me what I need to promise myself, and I will take the pledge. My monkey mind is grinding again. It's been this way since I don't know when dog eats dog and there's chaos all around, I tell myself one more time, slow down. Is it a failure of logic or a gap in communication? Who gave me this raw deal, and is it up for negotiation? What keeps me feeling divided and lost at an open sea? All I want to do in life is be free to be me. So, I don't even remember what I called that, actually. I have a question mark on the title that says falling into place or falling apart. So if you have ever found yourself in that situation, that one's for you. And now that I have your attention, let's talk about meditation. Oh, shoot, I'm so sorry that is probably making all sorts of awful noise. So, when I started doing this channel, this programming on this channel, I think I mentioned that the program that was one of the ones that we're currently promoting was Dr. Joe Dispenza's series, which I love, which is great. And especially if you're one of those people who has not yet bought in to meditation or feels like you can't, or somehow you haven't bought into it for whatever reason. So he really explains things very clearly, very scientifically, here's how and why things happen, and here's what it means for you in your life, right? So for folks who like tangible evidence, he's a really good guy to follow. At the same time, Gaia was promoting this in-person event they're having in March, which, who knows, maybe I'll go. And one of the speakers that everybody seemed to be very excited about, I got curious about. And so this is someone who is a psychic channel who channels for an extraterrestrial being named Bashar. And so, there was all this sort of like, ooh, Bashar, oh, da 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 da. And so I thought, see who this guy is and find out what they're all about. So then I watched a couple of episodes. I think they might not be the same series, but they were 2 episodes that featured this person. His name is Daryl Anka, and he is the channel for Bashar. And Bashar, he himself didn't even know until after he had begun channeling this being for, I don't know, months or years or whatever it was, that Bashar is the Arabic word for messenger or bringer of good news. And I thought, isn't that interesting and appropriate? Because the things that I'm only just now aware of this person, but apparently the person, Daryl Anka, and the being, Bashar, apparently they have a very big following. And here's the thing that's so fascinating. There's many things that are so fascinating, I can't really say that there's just one. But so the guy who channels, Daryl Anka, he has this phrase that he sort of repeats, across the different interviews he's done. He has this phrase that he kind of repeats. And I was like, that's an interesting phrase. And then when he said it again, I was like, okay, that's a thing. And I don't actually have it specifically word for word memorized, but essentially what he's saying is his view of what's coming through, whether or not you believe in aliens, whether or not you believe aliens are communicating with us, whether or not you believe we're alone in the universe, whether or not you have questioned the origins of mankind, whether or not you have ever even started to question anything at all. He's bringing information that has the potential to be really powerfully helpful and supportive for any one of us on our ongoing journey towards our soul's evolution. So he says, here's the information, it's none of my business what you do with it. That's the thing. We can get all the information we want, but what are you doing with it? And so I thought it would be interesting to put these 2 people, Dr. Joe Dispenza, this neuroscientist, medical doctor, I actually don't remember what his credentials are, but I love hearing him speak. And Bashar, this alien interdimensional being who is sharing information with us about how to live a fulfilling, well-balanced, healthy life, and some information about where we have come from as a species. Everybody talks about the missing link. Well, if you've been watching any of these programs where they're really going deep and investigating the history of mankind, and archaeologists have been running into things that don't make sense, they're like, well, this seems to say that we're tens of thousands of years older than the other thing says. And so there's been this sort of questioning of what the mainstream, I hate even using mainstream, but they have been questioning what the kind of rigid academic archaeologist line has been. And that's the thing about academia. Academia changes really slowly, right? Even Galileo was persecuted for his ideas because they didn't go along with the current times. So academia, it's a big institution, and that is, it also prevents people from just sort of carelessly becoming charlatans, or at least it reduces that amount anyway. Because the things you have to go through to get your credentials as an academic are, they're not easy, and so nobody would want to spend that much time and energy if it was that difficult. I wouldn't imagine anyway. But that's beside the point. The point is, whether or not you believe in aliens, both he and Dr. Joe Dispenza talk a lot about how important it is to slow down the mind, to allow ourselves that kind of mental rest. And, he talks about how most of us, like 90% of humanity, runs around stressed out all the time. And what he says is that when we are in that stressed out, survival mode way of being, we're not able to create. We're not able to co-create. We're not able to build a more beautiful world for ourselves and for our communities. We're not able to essentially tap into our creative spirit when we are in that stress out mode. And here's the other thing that's key to both these views, right? The ones coming from this alien being and the ones coming from, a very well-respected neuroscientist in his field on planet Earth, right? Human being. That slowing down of the mind, the quieting of the monkey mind, as it were, that slowing down of the mind allows us to be more receptive. He even literally, Dr. Joe Dispenza literally says that there is a correlation between being suggestible to new information and being very highly analytical. Now, some people think it's a very bad thing to be suggestible to new information, and in some cases, it is a very bad thing to be suggestible to new information, especially if you're sniffing around up the skirts of cults, right? You don't want to be too suggestible to somebody that's going to get you caught up in this other spiral over here, right? But if you're trying to make changes in your life, you need to be open. You need to be suggestible. You need to be open to new ideas so that those new ideas can take root. And the way to do that is through quieting the mind, and the other aspect of it, quieting the mind and being as much of an objective observer in your own life as you possibly can. Now, I have said many times before that complete objectivity is not possible in human beings, that we all have some subjective viewpoint, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. So I don't propose that we can be objective and that we can factually 100% be objective. But what I propose is that we can aspire towards objectivity, and the thing that helps us get closer to that is just witnessing our lives. And Alberto Villoldo, in his teachings in our training at the Four Winds Society, he goes through this exercise in one of his books, and I think he has, some videos on it on YouTube as well, where you start your meditation, and as soon as a thought comes in, you ask, who is thinking that thought? And then you let it go. And then the next time a thought comes in, you ask, who is witnessing the thought? Who is observing the thought? Who is the person, who is the being, who is the consciousness observing you having the thought? And the more you can put yourself in that sort of a step or two back from your own conscious mind, which is usually an ego-based, ego-driven mind, and our egos keep us safe, right? But our egos also can wreak havoc in our lives if we let them have control all the time. So you don't have to believe in aliens, and you don't have to believe in science. But if you try these practices and find one that works for you, oh my goodness, find one that works for you. And I actually do have one meditation on my channel somewhere, so look for, it's the one I put on Black Friday, the one that, November Thanksgiving. It's a long meditation. That was my boycott capitalism moment. So go there, find the meditation, see if you like that one. If you don't like it, try any of the zillions of apps that are out there making meditations. I think even Dr. Joe Dispenza might have meditations. He might even have them for sale on the Gaia website. But find something that resonates with you. So sometimes it takes something really big to get us to make a big change in our lives. Sometimes it takes a near-death experience, some traumatic event, some major loss. And both Dr. Joe Dispenza and Daryl Anka, channeling Bashar, they both discuss this kind of something has to happen to make us ready to receive information. So for Daryl Anka, he actually had to experience a couple of UFO sightings in his late teens and early 20s. And what he later learned is that those were deliberate, that this alien being, Bashar, had apparently in some previous life, they had made some contract with each other that this was going to happen. And so in order for him to convince the earthly human version of his spirit, he had to show himself a couple of times to get him curious enough about alien life and UFOs in general that he would start doing some research. And he would start getting curious. And then he would do more research. And then he would get more curious. And then he ended up learning how to be a channel. And then Bashar came through for him. And then on the other hand, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how he had a very serious accident and wasn't sure if he was going to walk again. And he, makes this sort of bold statement that he swore if he ever learned to walk again, that he would commit his entire life to studying the mind-body connection and being able to use our minds to heal ourselves. Let me tell you, sweetheart, it all starts with meditation. People are going to try to tell you, well, nobody's going to try to tell you otherwise because everybody's going to tell you that it starts with meditation. So I invite you, I encourage you, start finding some way that you enjoy, that makes your spirit feel delicious. For some people, it's just prayer, right? Like some people have a prayer practice, and that is really the equivalent to meditation, in my personal view. I don't have a prayer practice, I have a meditation practice. That's where I find my deepest spiritual connections. But everybody gets their juice a different way. And there's no judgment to the way you get your juice. Okay, so I have to look at my outline to see what... Oh, and my outline interrupts my... Sorry. This is the new setup today, so I'll get it better. I'll have a better way to look at my notes. Oh, right. Oh, yeah. I knew this was going to be a good one. So, let's see. Being prepared to receive information. Some of the things that Bashar shares with humanity, some people might not believe, and that's fine. You don't have to believe it. But in a lot of the programs on ancient civilizations, they have been talking about how, I mentioned earlier, the missing link, that quote-unquote missing link that scientists have been studying for decades, was, according to the alien being Bashar, was in fact a deliberate genetic mutation done by an alien race to the species on Earth that was known at the time as Homo erectus. And so, no, that's not a gay joke. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I just had to. I know a couple of you you were already laughing. I know you were. So there's another show that I watch, Ancient Civilizations, which I'm excited. I just had a conversation with one of the folks from Gaia, and they're like, "Yeah, definitely, start using that content and promoting that content as well." So I'm excited about that one. And there's an episode in Ancient Civilizations where they talk about, this is, I guess, ancient, I want to say Mesopotamia. Pardon me. If I'm wrong, please somebody comment and correct me and cite your source, please. Because sometimes I'll say things that I remember and I won't remember where I heard it. So if you know the true answer and you have a source to back it up, please correct me and comment. I would love that. So in one of these episodes of Ancient Civilizations, they were talking about how apparently there's like human chromosome number 2, I think it is. Again, if I'm wrong, please somebody find the real answer and correct me. But there's a particular chromosome that, I guess when you look at it under a microscope, it's weird. It looks like it's been separated and reconnected. And so they were talking about how, the ancient texts from that time period talk about these Anunnaki, which they were considered to be these god beings. Turns out they were an alien race. They came down and they, there's some dark stories behind it, right? There was slavery involved. There was, some ethics that were pretty janky involved. In fact, this alien Bashar says it's quite possible that the ones who initially did this experiment on Homo erectus, which resulted in the eventual evolution of us into Homo sapiens, that it's possible that the beings who did that were not supposed to do that it was a violation of their own laws. So we, human beings, may very well be, excuse me, maybe, are we the very first, the original genetically modified organism? Maybe we are. Maybe we are. So let's pause for a moment and let's just get on board right now with this idea that it's a good idea for our souls to evolve. So if you're not on board with that idea, you might not like any of the rest of what I'm saying. But if you're on board with that idea, let's think about what that all means for how we can serve our purpose, how we can have a fulfilling life, and most importantly, and I'm going to get into why this is so important, how to get out of this life alive, how to die consciously. Alberto talks about that in our training. He talks about how, the whole point of a shaman is to learn how to die consciously, how to get out of this life alive. He says that a lot. And, a lot of these concepts that we talk about in this kind of energy medicine, somebody says it like 3 or 4 times and you really aren't even really sure what in the world that means. Well, now, what day is it? I began my training in June of 2021. Here we are in February of 2025, and I think I finally know what he's talking about. So, pause, shift. It's not a big deal. Shifting topics just as a side note, just temporarily. So my partner and I have been watching the show called The Dead Files. He, for a long time, has been very interested in paranormal investigations, things like that. And he watches a lot of those sort of adventure kind of shows, which, aren't necessarily my cup of tea. But there's this one that he has been very into, and I'm kind of sort of into it now as well, called The Dead Files. And one of the things that we both love about it is that there's 2 investigators, and they never talk to each other until the end. One of the investigators is a retired police officer from New York. So he goes in and he conducts an investigation of what has happened on that property, because these are people coming to them saying, I think there's paranormal activity going on in my house. It's haunted, there's ghosts, there's apparitions, there's whatever. So they contact them for them to do an investigation. So he's doing it from just a police hard cold evidence, what's the history, what's the evidence about who's lived here, and who are the dead that might likely be lingering around wreaking havoc, because P.S., They can do that. They can do that. The other investigator is a woman who is a psychic, and she communicates with the dead. So she separately goes in and she does a walkthrough of the house, and sometimes it's a gentle story, but oftentimes there's stories of great trauma. Time after time, there's some story of somebody who experienced some great trauma, either some really violent death, maybe they were murdered, or maybe they had some really awful sickness and they got stuck in that sort of death state. And they linger, and they linger. And sometimes their sadness and their despair lingers. And sometimes that sadness and that despair affects the living who are there. And sometimes, this is what's been coming up that I find very interesting, sometimes there will be a history of some sort of colonial genocidal act on the property, like the enslavement of human people or the genocide of Native Americans. There was one episode recently where there was the spirit of a Native American who was so vengeful, partly because he himself sold out his people to the US government, and also because he was like cursing, anybody that would ever try to live there because of the suffering that happened to his people. And in another episode, the family that lives there wasn't direct descendants of slave owners, but there was a sort of scenario that had lingered where there was the starvation and death of several young black boys, and the guardians, the spirits who are lingering, are not allowing white people to live there. So everybody who has lived there since then has faced heartbreak, death, destruction. So it's curious how the dead linger. And I've learned that just in the things that I do. I recognize that it happens. I don't see all the details in the invisible world like a lot of my friends do, but I can usually feel it. And when I realized that these spirits of these people who had suffered so much, of these people who endured great pain, great trauma, when their souls get stuck here, they get stuck here on loop, repeating the same trauma over and over and over again. If that's not hell, I don't know what is. And so when Alberto says, the whole point is to get out of this life alive, to die consciously, that's what it is. It's the same thing that they teach us, leave no trace. And at first, they call it invisibility, right? It's about being invisible. Well, at first I'm like, oh, it's invisibility. Oh, nobody can see me. Ha ha ha, I have my Harry Potter invisibility cloak on. Well, then they explained that actually it's about not leaving trace, like when you walk through the wilderness, not leaving trace that you were there, or when you walk through the snow, not leaving your footsteps in the snow. And I was like, oh, that's a very responsible thing to do, not leaving a negative mark on the planet after your existence, right? Like, try to be a good person and try to improve it, make it more beautiful, more healthy, more vibrant than when you got it, right? That's a basic ethic that I find central to my reality. Cool, awesome. What I didn't realize is that dying consciously helps us to ensure that we don't linger, that we don't haunt, that our trauma doesn't linger for someone else to have to suffer through. So this is where it's at. It's time for us to heal ourselves, heal our ancestors, heal the ancestral wounds our ancestors have caused, and learn to become one with the natural world that we're in. I'm not going to apologize for sounding like I'm proselytizing, because I feel like it's kind of urgent right now for us to all individually and collectively start to get on board with what it means to be in harmony with our environment, with our community, with our family, with our loved ones, with our friends, with the animals, with the plants, the oceans, the waters, to get in tune to a higher frequency. Okay, I'm looking at my notes again. Oh, that's the other thing I was going to say. Okay, I was going to talk about why I sang that song, aside from the fact that it's about, quieting the monkey mind. But also, secret tidbit for those of you here at the very end. So I don't usually make it a secret, but I don't blab it out loud usually, that I have had a medical card for medical marijuana in the past. If I'm being really honest, I began using recreationally because I enjoy the euphoria. I have never found it to be an addictive substance. It just makes me laugh more than I normally do, and people have called me a laugh slut, so I like laughing. But there's a new way, besides medically and besides recreationally, that I have been using it on a regular basis. Actually, there's two ways. One is for creative purposes. And what I often do, this is me demystifying my own process for you, what I often do is I'll just have a smoke, sit down in meditation, and when it's most effective is when I go in with a set intention. So on the day that I wrote that song, I woke up. Well, I didn't do it first thing in the morning, but at some point during the day, I set my intention, had a smoke, sat down and meditated, and my intention was for the first song of my quest to come through. And it did, right? So that's how it's been working for me since I started on this path, and since I started realizing that music is part of my medicine. I've started to realize that, when it's time to write a song, I actually have a very clear process that I do. I whatever's been germinating, I call in what is the song that needs to come through about this thing that's been germinating. So today, I knew there was a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about, and I was like, I need to be able to stay organized to get through it. Because as a professor, I would always, as long as I had an outline, I could just talk extemporaneously, for the hour and a half or however many minutes the classes are. So I had my outline, and so I set the intention this morning, had a little smoke, did a meditation, set my intention. I was like, I know I have this basic idea. And I even I forgot to take a picture of it, I kind of put the heading at the top of my journal page, and I put 2 bullet points that were going to start the bullet points of comparisons. And then, all that came through. So for me, perhaps because I have a rather high-spinning monkey mind, having a little smoke before my meditation helps me to be really relaxed and really focused, which for me is just about the best thing. So using it medicinally, I've done it. Using it recreationally, I've done it. Using it for creativity, I've done it. And using it for ritual ceremonial purposes. So, y'all, let's not get down on the MMJ, right? The MMJ is our friend and ally, especially when we're living in a world where the stressors and the anxiety producing things in our environment might encroach on our reality a little bit, right? That was what this whole past year was for me, was learning how to find that balance. I was pretty happy up in Laurelann in my spiritual adventures. But sometimes the real world is like, you need to come over here and pay attention to me, because there's things that are not going away if you don't deal with them. So it's a balance, right? We're in this human meat suit. We may as well figure out how to make the best of this journey while we're here in this vessel. So I think that's everything that I was going to talk about. Oh my goodness, and I went just about double the time I usually do. So I will end there. I'm not going to do a meditation. I thought I was going to, but I think you've had enough of me. If you want a meditation, go to my Black Friday post from last November. Please remember to like and subscribe. And if you appreciate this content, please share it. And if you want to be involved in this conversation with the content with Gaia, and you want to get your own subscription to Gaia, please do so during my affiliate, using my affiliate link, which I'll put in the description here. That helps me. It helps me continue to bring these kinds of conversations to the forefront. Gaia is the only streaming platform that I pay for. And so I feel like I'm walking my talk of supporting with my dollar conscious media for critical times. Thanks for listening. See you soon.